Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to be a continuation of a previous lesson from Proverbs 17. Now, this was actually the first one I ever did out of my independent initiative. I made it all the way up until the 12th verse, and what I've been doing recently is dividing Proverbs chapters in half because there's so much to say and not enough time to cover them in half an hour. But when I first started doing these things, I was in the practice of emailing them to myself. So anything beyond 15 minutes was not going to email and transfer. But there's just three verses I want to cover in the first 12 of which we already covered. This is a little less than the halfway point. It's a chapter of 28 verses. Those are verses 3, verses 5, and verses 9. None of them are necessarily connected or related, but they all are thought-provoking and prestigious, shall we say. A refining pot is for silver and a furnace for gold, but Yahweh tries the hearts. So we read earlier in 16:2 that Yahweh weighs the spirits, but trying and weighing are parallel and synonymous, and spirits and hearts, these are both interior organs or features. So Yahweh, who is a spiritative being, has subterranean insight into our hearts and our spirits. So we like to distract people from our inner rot by posing an artificial exterior, a persona that belittles and minimizes the person who we truly are. But there's no tricking and there's no fooling Yahweh. He created our hearts, he created our spirits, he is the master of them, and he has insight into them. He who mocks the poor reproaches his maker. He who rejoices at calamity does not go unpunished. So the poor and even in the new covenant, we are instructed that how we treat the least among us will be an accurate reflection of how we receive the master and how he will receive us. Did we treat the least among us as they were the master themselves? That is his standard. And in the Old Testament, Yahweh's law reflects a passionate concern for the plight of the poor. They are made this the same way as the rich. They are created by the same creator, and he is a royal democrat who likes to share his court with his people. But richness cannot purchase heaven, and so if you treat the poor among you, mocking them, you are in fact insulting the one who made them. And rejoicing at calamity, it's an occasion for sadness and mourning and weeping. It's not an occasion to rejoice at the suffering of other people, and you will not escape punishment, and rightly so for that. People like that deserve to be punished. Verse 9, he who covers a transgression seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates intimate friends. So there's an antithetical contrast here between the one who is forgiving and covers a transgression. That means to expiate. That's the term covering. It's a theological term for forgiveness. It's a covering, and we are covered in the blood of the Messiah. That's our ticket to heaven, and our sins are forgiven because he forgave them for us. Of course, this does not absolve us of the moral responsibility to forgive others. So divine forgiveness is far too precious a commodity to waste on the human who is unforgiving in themselves. And gossip, the Bible always speaks negatively about it. Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and base minds discuss people. Gossips are busybodies. They're always in everyone else's personal business, and they rarely, if ever, discuss ideas or events, but usually people is the target of their concern. So the gossip monger or rumor monger or gossiper, whatever you want to call them, they are no good, and they have the potential devastating impact to separate intimate friends. And that we read of the concept of friendship in the 17th verse. But we're going to start with the 13th verse. Whoever rewards evil for good, evil does not leave his house. So in Romans 12:21, we are instructed to reward, to fight the fire of hatred and evil with the water of love and good. So, but if we reward evil, if we pay it, if we endorse it, if we in any way, shape, or form condone it, by treating what is accursed, evil is the affliction of curses onto others, and eventually, as a consequence of seeing a blessing in the evil that you inflict on others, evil will be a permanent resident in your house. They will never leave you alone. They will never bother you. They will never leave you. They are always there for evildoers. And of course, it bears mention, Proverbs are to be interpreted not as promises, but principles. So this is a general principle. It's not an automatic guarantee. It's not a promise. We just want to bear that in mind throughout the book of Proverbs. The beginning of strife is like releasing water. Therefore, stop fighting before it breaks out. So the way to stop that fighting in commotion and calamity is to love your enemies, give them no cause or occasion to hate you. Proverbs 16:7, when a man's ways are pleasing in Yahweh's, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. So there is strife is to be avoided like the plague. It's the unpleasant and unnecessary contention, which spreads exponentially beyond itself, much as released water from a dam. It's going to spread and overflow eventually, and quickly, and thoroughly, and totally. And the best solution and antidote to conflict is to interrupt it from ever breaking out, because once that dam is released, there's no turning back. It's already out in the open. So we are to use it's easier to wage war than it is to wage peace. Getting angry, upset, or violent is the easy way out, but far more challenging is to be peaceful, which requires a peacemaker, which requires diplomacy, tact, and prudence. He who justifies the wicked and he who condemns the righteous, both of them are an abomination to Yahweh. So he's speaking of human terms. That's the one thing we want to communicate before we build the ultimate thought of this foundation. The justice in Israel, which Solomon would have implemented and overseen, was to punish the wicked and punish and condemn the wicked and absolve and acquit the righteous. But from a New Testament, and both of these are equally detestable and both declared an abomination to Yahweh, because the justice is thought of as a balance. But from the lens of the New Testament, we may be looking at this, say, wait a minute, aren't we guilty and justified? Haven't we escaped the punishment we deserve? And the answer is yes and no. We are acquitted by grace. None of us qualify for heaven. None of us are purely innocent. None of us are sinless. But because the sinless one became sin and bore our penalties, that is how we are acquitted. So the concept of atonement, it includes a vicarious, innocent animal or individual to atone for the forgiveness of sin. They must bear the punishment of the sinner's sin, which is death, as prescribed as earlier as Eden. And Yahshua was, of course, more than a man. He was divinity in the flesh, and he bore our sin penalty, even though we all deserved our own crucifixion, but he took it upon us, and that explains the theological concept of justification, whereby a wicked and a guilty one may be declared innocent at the judgment through his propitiation. Why is this? A price in the hand of a fool to buy wisdom, when there is no heart. So wisdom is a treasure beyond calculable measure of monetary resources. It cannot be bought. You can buy yourself a university education all the way up, but if you don't have the heart, the aptitude, or the appetite for it, wisdom is not wealth. It may provide you a better education, but it's not going to guarantee you wisdom, which is what we're all after for. And education does not necessarily instill wise universities. And in this country, we used to rank first in education habitually and annually until Jimmy Carter got this bright idea to federalize the public schools, and we've been lagging ever since. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. So at all times means and extends to both the adversity, the promise, the positive and the negative, the adversity and the delight and the blessings and the pleasure. And that is the mark of a true friend. They love you no matter what you're going through, no matter what you may have done to them or others. They're still going to love you at all times. The love is an unbreakable bond, which defines true friendship. And a brother is made. These are the intended creative purposes of brothers to assist and enable brothers to overcome their adversity and affliction. So that is the sign of a brother. That is the reason, that is the meaning of brotherly love, to comfort your brother when he is going through adversity. A man lacking heart shakes hands in a pledge. He becomes a guarantor for his friend. So as early as the first chapter, Solomon advises against the practice of assuming liabilities, or the process was whereby one would vouch for another person and be held morally responsible for them. But the danger and difficulty is that you are vouching for a human. None of us are perfect. All of us are liable to error, and that can complicate a situation such as that, bringing unnecessary and preventable drama and contention in the person who pledges or vouches for them's life. They could have escaped the avoidable calamity which must come their way as a consequence of them vouching or pledging for the wrong person. So to put it simply, don't do it to begin with. Don't assume the debts and liabilities of your imperfect friends, no matter how good a friend you are. And a man who lacks heart will not know this stuff. They will just instinctively do it because they lack heart. He who loves righteousness, he who loves transgression, loves strife. He who exalts his door seeks destruction. So transgressors, they are transgressors, aka sinners, and sinners, people naturally gravitate and revolve around the people who are like them, who have the same interests, same appetites, same aptitudes, same common pursuits and passions. So natural companion of a transgressor, and when you get two or more of these combined, what you have is strife and contention and realistically violence. So sin does invite violence and devastation and ruin, and the sin of pride or exalting oneself is a intuitively destructive strategy, because as we read in the New Testament, Matthew 23:12, Luke 14:11, and 18:14, he who humbles himself shall be exalted, he who exalts himself shall be abased. He who has a crooked heart finds no good, and he who has a perverse tongue falls into evil. So there are two bodily organs, the heart, which is the seat and center of our emotion, will, and volition. And if it's crooked or corrupt or in any way malfunctioning morally, then it's going to no good. They're going to fall into curses after another because their heart is awry. And at the heart of every problem lays the problem of the heart. So get your heart aligned with Yahweh's will, and all will go well. The second one is the perverse tongue. Now, language can bring ruin, it can bring healing, and Solomon says much of this, I believe, in the chapter which comes after this. Perversity, that just means inappropriate, profane, or anything else negative. They're going to spring their own trap by speaking words they should not. They're going to speak the wrong words in the wrong way to the wrong person at the wrong time, and it's going to fall back on them and invite and haunt them. he who brings forth a fool has sorrow for it, and the father of a fool has no joy. So fools are not people that one can take pride in, either as a friend or a son. You don't want a fool to be seen as your tag on at a social gathering, because the fool is going to invite nothing but trouble. He's going to be an embarrassment and a shame to himself and you by connection. So bringing fools to social situations is going to result in misery and sorrow for having done so. And a father can take delight in a son who is well raised and flourishing and succeeding, but a fool is not going to attain those exalted measures, and therefore the father of the fool will have no joy, because fools bring nothing good for themselves, nothing good for others, nothing positive for humanity, nothing beneficial to the spread of the kingdom. We have to be wise as serpents and as gentle as doves while spreading the kingdom. Matthew 10:16, I believe. A rejoicing heart causes good healing, but a stricken spirit dries the bone. So this is an antithetical contrast. The dead giveaway is the word but. So whenever it's and or occasionally so at the bottom line of the second thought connecting it to the first, that means it's a completion of the sentence. But here we read an antithetical one. Between a rejoicing heart has a contagious effect, and it brings health and healing and life to those who are surrounded by its contagious optimism and praise and gratitude. But a stricken spirit, on the contrary, will dry the bones. So there are physical consequences for not attending to our internal and vital organs, of which we have and must attend to. One who is wicked accepts a bribe behind the backs to pervert the path of justice. So the most common temptation of acquitting the wicked and condemning the righteous would have been a bribe. So men of means and influence could influence a judge through a gift, a donation of money, on the implicit understanding that they would rule in their favor. And so bribes are a sin declared in the law of Moses. Solomon certainly had no positive things to say about them. And what they do is, why they're bad is because they pervert the path of justice. They distort the path of justice, the stream of justice, which should by right flow like a running stream. Amos 5:24 is diverted from its continual path. They represent a blight in the justice system. So just one offering bribes, and especially accepting them, perverts and distorts and corrupts and compromise justice as it should be. Wisdom is before the face of the understanding one, but the eyes of a fool are on the ends of the earth. So people who have wisdom and are wise, they possess wisdom. It's literally on the front of their brain and on the tip of their tongue. They don't have to go anywhere to seek it, for it is already with them. Whereas foolish people, they are wanderers and daydreamers who perhaps desire wisdom but don't want to pay the price, don't even know the price. They just want it for the prestige and all the things they see, all the acclamations and adulations that are given to the wise that they lack. So they will have their eyes. Wisdom is never more than a prayer away. He is the omniscient one, the source of all wisdom. So that's the most reliable formula to be wise, is to pray for wisdom, and a righteous request he will not refuse. We witness this in James 1:5. If any of you lack wisdom, seek and ye shall find it. Terrible paraphrase, but we witness the power of that principle in Solomon himself, who, as a 19-year-old ruler, after offering sacrifices in Gibeon, in the 3rd chapter of the 1st book of Kings and in the 1st chapter of the 1st book of Chronicles, a 2nd book of Chronicles rather, he is visited by Elohim in a dream, who offers him a blank slate, anything he can choose. And because he's 19 years old, he knows that the thing he lacks is the wisdom to rule so great a people. So he asks for it, and his answer so delighted the one who offered it that he offered him what he had not asked for, wealth, prestige, and long life, contingent that he follow the footsteps of his father David. And this he met his premature demise at the age of 59 for not having done so. So his reign was 40 years, just like his father David. A foolish son is a grief to his father, and bitterness to her who bore them. So we've already read something similar. The father of the fool has no joy, but they are also a poor reflection on the mother who raised them and the father who raised them, alike and equally. They can't take pride and joy and delight in their son if he is a fool, because no good thing can come of foolishness. Therefore, nothing good can come out of or from fools. And if that fool came out of you, that's an embarrassment and a blight on your reputation. Now, it doesn't compromise character. What it does is compromise reputation. And anyone who values reputation, anyone else's or their own reputation, above their character, is a worthless coward, unfit for the kingdom. It is also not good to punish the righteous one, to smite noble ones for straightness. Now, the noble may not be, I think, is best interpreted not as a stationary socioeconomic class, the nobles, the aristocrats, but one who acquires nobles, one who is not necessarily born into the noble class, but possesses the quality, if not the status, of noble nevertheless. Don't smite them for walking the straight and narrow, and that does excite the envy of the world, the wicked world, who does persecute us, not because we do wrong, but because we do right. And that's just one of the things we have to accept and live with by faith. And of course, it defeats the purpose of justice to punish the righteous and the innocent. I try and stay as far away from politics as I can in these, but what's going on with President Trump, who is as clean as a hound dog's tooth. He has been most thoroughly vetted president. They have everything over them, and these Democrats, they just keep looking and searching, hoping for something to come up that they can use against them without the legitimate pretext of probable cause. Right now, their whole impeachment investigation is a cover-up for the corruption of their own current front runner, who is Joe Biden at this moment in time. That's all I'm going to say about politics. We got 2 more verses to cover. He who has knowledge spares his word, and a man of understanding is cool of spirit. Now, the danger of introducing politics is it's difficult to extract it from one mind. So he who has knowledge spares his word. That's the verse which comes after this. So knowledge does not need to suffer from the same compulsion as folly or foolishness to make itself and spread itself and make its voice known to everyone in the room. A prudent man concealeth knowledge, but the heart of the fools proclaimeth foolishness. Proverbs 12:23. So they speak the right words. They speak just enough to all that is necessary. Nothing superfluous. They don't need to speak to be heard, but they do have the right word, the right words for the right season and the right occasion. And one of the marks and measures of a man of understanding is a coolness of spirit. That means they are not hot, they're not fiery, they're not violent or volcanic, but they are cool and bring a peaceful calmness and serenity to the places they go, wherever the spirit that is connected and inside them dwells. Wherever they go, it is there with them. Even a fool keeping silence is regarded as wise, as understanding when he closes his lips. So this is where I cannot help but think about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who would do herself a world of good if she would just learn to shut her trap. Now, when speaking from a script and prepared questions, she's actually quite fluent, but when she's reported live, forget about it. She jumbles her sentences in the strangest of syntaxes, has these inaccurate historical analogies, and her fear mongering is miles beyond the reality. There's no adequate comparison to the detention facilities of the illegal aliens in our country, the concentration camp of the Nazis. That's just not true. But just to return to the passage, see, I do get distracted, and but all issues do connect. But so theology and politics are interrelatable, but not synonymous. But the principle is, if you are not wise, better not to speak and expose your own folly and foolishness. Better to hold your tongue, and you will have the appearance, or at least the veneer, of being wise by your silence, whereas your speaking is a dead giveaway to everyone in the room that you are in fact a fool, because language is one of the indicators of one. It's not the most exact or thorough indicators. Many well-spoken people are not wise, and many wise people do not speak well. But that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Stay tuned until next time. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.